I'm Renee Nelson, and this is Unsolved Wyoming. Hey folks, so I wanted to start posting more content to help build my page, give more of my backstory, all the fun things, right? And so I decided to share with you why I started Unsolved Wyoming. And so, yeah, if you would have told me that I was going to start a podcast, I wouldn't have said it was out of the realm of possibility, but definitely at that time, which will make more sense later, a no-go. But maybe not a true crime podcast, which hilariously, I don't know why I didn't see that coming because duh, but um I've always been a crime junkie since I was little, and so it does make sense that that's where I would end up and what I would want to do. But my earliest memories, I can hear uh, the theme song for America's Most Wanted, in the background. I can hear John Walsh's voice narrating. 2020 Dateline raised me. I feel like the theme song for Unsolved Mysteries gave me nightmares forever. And still, even now, if I hear it, gives a little shudder, but I loved it. And so, obviously, my interest kind of stayed in that realm. And so between horror, crime thrillers, mysteries, true crime has always been kind of the pinnacle of that. And there's other reasons for that too that maybe I'll share on another day, but I would say my personal experiences lent to, that as well. And so there was actually a time when after undergrad I landed that big girl job. I was really lucky. I was one of the this was back before the economic crash of 2008. And so I had this great job, but it burnt me out really early on because it was a 24/7 job and I was the director, and I just kind of sat there and I wanted to do something else, right? And so I was trying to figure out what I would do, and the FBI came up, applying for the FBI, studying for my LSAT to go to law school, or getting my graduate degree in English so I could go teach and maybe go write the next American novel. And so, ironically, I did not get my first full-time job teaching until 7 years later after graduating and literally had a baby. And so, I've never got to experience that type of job without children. It has always been in the context of children, so the joke was on me. But it's a great job for having a family. And so the cool thing about my job though is that with English I can curate classes to have some type of true crime aspect, but there's one class in particular where we get to pick the topic as long as it's meeting certain competencies. And so I decided to come up with a true crime lit class. And the criteria for the cases that I selected was that it had to have a podcast, a book, as well as a documentary, and that we would read around those three things, read around, listen, watch, read, and discuss how each medium gave a different slant to the case. And if you're curious about what cases I've covered, let me know, and I'll send you some lists with books and the whole 9 yards. I have all the materials. Anyways, and so it was fall of 21. I'm running the class, and we're actually reading Tina Fontaine's story, Red River Girl. Highly recommend the book. It's so, the writing in this book is out of this world. You feel like you're watching a documentary as you're reading the book, and come to find out the author, what is her name? Joanna Jolly. She is a documentarian by trade, and so the way that she writes, really, you were captivated as though you're watching a documentary. It's wild. So we're reading the story, and it's a tragic case of a young First Nations woman who, First Nations girl, sorry, apologize. First Nations girl, she was 15, she's a girl, who was murdered and discovered, and the man who killed her was not brought to justice. He was found not guilty, and just the horror around this, right? Such a common thing that we hear about justice not being served in this community. And as this was happening, as we're reading this case, the Gabby Petito case breaks out, right? And so happening because she was last seen in Wyoming, Wyoming is kind of at the focus of the search. And so it really affected home. But obviously, it was this phenomenon that has been coined, missing white woman syndrome, that Gabby Petito was everywhere, right? Even, social media channels that didn't cover true crime, were reporting on this, were posting on this. And, this incredibly insightful article came out at that time that as of to date in 2021, there were 710 reported Indigenous people that were missing. And not one of those people had received news coverage. So I'm sitting there talking to my students about this. How do they feel? What are their insights? Why do they think this is? And it's always so weird to say this out loud, but it's the truth. I had this voice in my head that said, well, you should start a podcast. And, we all have our internal monologues, and, they sound like us. This one didn't sound like me. It was like an outside voice came into my head and said, you should start a podcast. And I was like, no, I shouldn't. That's a terrible idea. And the reason being, it was because I was a full-time instructor. I had a 2-year-old daughter and a 4-month-old infant son. Your girl didn't have time to go and start a podcast. But this idea wouldn't leave me. It just kept gnawing at me and gnawing at me. And that Christmas, my husband asked me what I wanted, and I looked at him sheepishly, and I said, podcast mic? And he's like, oh, a podcast mic? What are we starting a podcast on? And I said, true crime. My husband hates true crime. He hates it. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't want to watch it. I'll give him nightmares. He's not the guy to watch true crime with. Anyway, so he got me the mic, and I started shooting off emails after the first of the year, and I got connected, and it was wild. Yeah, of course you should do this. Contact this person. Yeah, of course you should do this. You should contact that person. And I got in front of the right people, Desiree Tinoco being one of them, who is the founder and director of the Missing People of Wyoming's Facebook group that is huge and phenomenal and incredible, who then connected me to Jen Coker, who is this incredible true crime reporter and for the Cowboy State Daily. And here I am. The rest is history. And so, yeah, sometimes I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the universe. I don't know if it was God. I don't know if it was an idea that had literal a voice, but sometimes you just have to kind of go with it and see where it takes you. So anyways, that's the story behind Unsolved Wyoming.